Hey everyone, I'm John Coogan. Today I want to talk about the bullwhip effect and how it relates to supply chain management and product iteration at a startup. The bullwhip effect postulates that small changes in retail demand amplify into big swings up the supply chain. Essentially, as consumers begin to demand more of a product, each step in the supply chain overcompensates a little bit, which adds up to big swings in upstream production. COVID-19 has created a bevy of demand shocks, from essentials like toilet paper and hand sanitizer, to discretionary goods to keep people busy at home, like puzzles, board games, and even puppies. There's never been a better time to analyze the bullwhip effect and discuss how startups should deal with it. Let's use wine production as an example. The bullwhip starts with consumer sales. Perhaps there is a trend of influencers promoting wine as a healthier alternative, or a demographic shift driving more consumers into the category. In order to meet this consumer demand, retailers that carry wine place larger orders with their wholesalers. In turn, the wholesaler, who has a longer lead time, asks their manufacturer to increase production. Eventually, farmers who plan on a multi-year crop cycle shift production from less profitable crops to wine grapes, and pretty soon the global markets are flooded with new wine bottles. This is all fine as long as consumer demand keeps growing, but if the initial bump in consumer sales was more of a temporary fad than a durable trend, there will be an oversupply in the market. One classic real-world example of the bullwhip effect comes from Volvo. In the mid-1990s, the Swedish car manufacturer found itself with an excess of green cars. In order to sell them, the marketing department began running campaigns promoting green variants and rolled out discounts to incentivize purchases. But nobody told the manufacturing side of the business about the marketing push, so they saw the spike in green car sales as indicative of a broader consumer trend and ramped up production. This in turn left them with even more green cars to sell and back in the same place where they started. This bullwhip can affect startups in two ways. First is directly in supply and demand. If your startup is reliant on purchasing goods and services from upstream suppliers, you need to create a very tight connection between your marketing and operations teams. This is usually easy at the early stages since it's common for founders to be directly responsible for both departments. But as you scale, it's important to get on a regular cadence of supply and demand meetings where the CEO moderates between the heads of marketing and operations to come up with a forecast that reconciles both sides of the business. At a growing company, it can be natural to want to aim high and forecast compound growth. But if you have long lead times for key materials or products, it's critical that you facilitate an honest discussion about the business so you don't over or under order products. Since cash is often tight at the early stages, preventing excess inventory from building up can often add several months to your runway. Conversely, when you keep products in stock, you'll be sure that you aren't driving your customers to competing products while you are backordered. The second impact of the bullwhip effect on startups is in the broader context of product development. If you are building a product, there is a natural flow from the product team to the marketing team, and then from the customer back to the customer support team. The issue arises when there is latency between these teams. It's not uncommon for it to take months to get real-world usage and customer satisfaction data from a new product launch. This is especially true if you are using a metric like lifetime value, which can take months to accurately estimate. The solution to this problem is to find proxy metrics that can tell you if a product change is working earlier than expected. The best example of this I can think of comes from Facebook. Tasked with the goal of optimizing their site for long-term user acquisition, they realized that if a new Facebook user creates just 7 friends in the first 10 days, they are extremely likely to become a long-term user. Instead of needing to wait months to assess the impact of product changes, now it just takes 10 days to get results. The same strategy can be applied to all types of startups. If you're using an LTV metric that takes several quarters to reconcile, you should analyze the correlation between 2 months spend and LTV to see if that's indicative of long-term retention. Ultimately, the process for finding a specific proxy metric that will work for you is sometimes just as simple as looking at aggregated user data and seeing what pops out, and sometimes as complicated as running a logistic regression. Without a good proxy metric though, your startup won't be able to iterate as quickly, and months-old data will be whipping your product team back and forth. So even though it might be a daunting task to dig through all of your user data to find an early signal that is strongly correlated with long-term retention, it's totally worth it. One last thing to keep in mind is that after you've found a good proxy metric, it's important to make it simple enough that the entire company can intuitively understand it and act on it. That's why the 7 friends in 10 days metric at Facebook is so powerful. It's extremely clear, and you can see how both marketing and product teams could easily focus on improving this metric. It's important to recognize when a simple flaw in your company's way of operating is creating major gyrations in upstream decisions, like how much inventory to procure or what features to develop next. Once you get a handle on the bullwhip and rein in these fluctuations though, you'll be on a much more stable course. If you enjoyed this, please leave me a comment. I'm always looking for new ideas. Thank you.